So numbers are significant, and where I know you have interest and I have interest as well is what are we seeing in the next generation? And 46% of parents said that their teen has showed signs of anxiety throughout the pandemic since March 2020. So
Interesting.
46%, so almost half, which is not surprising, right?
Less surprising. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And I thought it was interesting the differences between teen boys and teen girls. So 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 7 boys have experienced new or worse anxiety in this study. So we're looking at 36% of teen girls, new anxiety or worsened anxiety versus 19% boys. So breaking that down of why girls are feeling more anxious than young men. I thought that was very, very interesting as well. Part of what I believe might be the culprit is this high pressure to succeed. We're not going to get into a good college unless you get XYZ grades and have all these extracurricular activities. What have you seen in this that might be contributing? Obviously, the disconnection between face-to-face contact and the screen time and all of that.
Right. There's a few things that come to mind. At first, I thought, well, what's the big difference here between boys and girls at that age? And I have never been a teen boy, but I can tell you as a teen girl, I mean, there were tons of pressures. And at this point, a lot of the stories I was telling myself were already locked in. And it seemed to me that even if I looked around and thought everybody else was more comfortable with themselves, the most comfortable were the boys. So that's the first thought and observation that I have in thinking back about this. I also reflect on the information from the Confidence Code book around the ages at which certain parts of us develop. And for girls, social emotional learning happens sooner, and it's more spatially focused for boys. And so they can go out and play sports and prove themselves physically, and their athletic and athleticness is considered great for according to society. So there's a lot of support for that. And what helps to reduce anxiety? Physical activity. So there's a loop there for me that I think can't be ignored. And the social emotional development of girls and women happening sooner. Now, men do catch up in their 20s, according to the book. We're more aware of more of what's going on, which could lead to more chatter, right? And we also have a social pressure to be responsive to these types of things. And if we just simply understood that some days the boys would catch up, and as far as our brain biology is concerned, the playing field is level. Our society is already structured that women feel more, men think more or do more. And so the reinforcement maintains part of that gap. The social reinforcement of these ideas maintains that gap over time. So it's almost like doubling down on those girls. And I immediately start to think, well, what's an answer? What's a solution? What's something we can do? I tend to be very problem-solving thinking. And I think I benefited a lot from being on sports teams. Being physically active, being competitive was important. Winning and losing, both. Going through the process of being sad and disappointed. And then going out and doing it again in spite of that, like those things were really helpful. The coolest, calmest times in my life, which I was a young person with anxiety and didn't know that until I was in my 20s, were around sports time, some social times. I also had social anxiety, but as an extrovert, that can just come off as energy. And so it works. So it wasn't glaring. It was just Melissa's the life of the party, and I could not help that. Yes, but the times when I was calmest was during those sports seasons. When I was off season, things were harder. If the focus was purely academic, if people wanted me to just engage intellectually, it was harder for me. I was not performing well in class. I did not like the structure of sitting in a chair in school. My mom tried to help by buying a desk that we could keep at the house. And I think now about everybody learning from home, because that was an awful experience, not a helpful one. Having a desk that I sat out felt like a timeout in a zone that was supposed to be the relaxed space or the comfort space or the family space. And it felt a little bit isolating. And we're talking about young people trying to figure out how to carve out different times in their brain, like work time, rest time, fun time, social time, self time, when adults have a hard time doing that as well because of the pandemic. Yeah. I love the conversations right now about people creating new ritual around work time, home time. It's so important. Put on your slippers when you get home, right? I sit in my car and I have a moment and I do some breathing and I'm I tell myself I'm on my way home to try to do better so that in hours from now I can get to sleep.
Really?
Yeah, what were you going to say?
That's gone away a lot with the pandemic, right? If there is no transition from work to home anymore, and that resetting, so to speak, everything is just mixed together in one big spaghetti pot. I think the main points I want to make in the article are the relabeling, right? We've talked about that.
Excitement, energy.
Exactly.
Something I can funnel.
Have you tried that on at all, Melissa?
Yes. So some areas I can say like energy or excitement, and it works for me because it takes one layer off of it. Yeah. So to me, anxiety is something, there's kind of two things. There are many things. Okay, this is tricky. So there's, see, I'm already like, so there's the thought process in when your thoughts are in loops, right? And some people say the washer machine or the bees or the hamster wheel, and it's the same stuff that can happen over and over again. And sometimes that could just be your like list, and then you write down the list and it's out of your brain. Sometimes that anxiety is in your body. Your body is telling you something is wrong, but you're not sure why. So I was watching something the other day and it described people who are having panic attacks. I've only had 2 or 3 in my entire life. It is not something I have to deal with often, but they were talking through the symptoms, what happens. And they said, now imagine that happening for absolutely no reason at all, not knowing why that happens. So it compounds. Not just because it's happening, but because you're like, and I don't know what's going on. It's terrifying. It's scary. So if I can take fear out of things, it's going to be a little bit lighter. If I can put knowledge into it, it's going to be a little bit lighter. So relabeling for me falls under that category as well. So if my thoughts are spinning, today is a Monday after a holiday. It's a harder day to stay focused. So instead of stressing myself out and going, oh, and I just can't settle down, it's like, because I haven't sat down and worked for a couple of days. Forgiveness. I'm going to go for a little walk, get out some of this extra energy and come back. And so I can call that energy. It never turns into a cycle of anxiety. And I feel calmer during my day, which means that I can look forward to the places where I do want to put that energy.